3 o'clock on this Monday afternoon. Welcome aboard the Postgame show alongside Elijah Campbell. I'm Jay Phillips. Appreciate you being with us. Nice to be back in the saddle after a day off on Friday. Elijah's capable hands and mind taking you through Friday's program as the Gamecock women took on Tennessee Tech. The Elijah Bowl, sort of.
That's right. It's a variance of the Elijah Bowl.
Yeah, sort of. Elijah was once a student back in the day for a little bit.
And a great one at that.
A little bit at Tennessee Tech University in beautiful Cookeville, Tennessee.
Beautiful's one way, but
right? Tennessee?
Tennessee.
Yeah.
Cookeville, Tennessee.
Speaking of Tennessee, they'll take on Kentucky for the first time ever in the NCAA tournament, but it's like the 180-something meeting.
No school has beaten each other more than them. No one's beaten the Kentucky Wildcats more than the Tennessee Volunteers. No one's beaten the Tennessee Volunteers more than the Kentucky Wildcats. They have a pretty storied history.
They don't like
each other.
They don't like each other. And as I've noted, 40-ish years ago, when the fine folks in Knoxville, Tennessee, were building a new basketball arena, they really only had one thing in mind: make it bigger than Rupp.
Yep. Mission accomplished, because that place is huge.
Yeah. I think you could fit 2 Rupps in it. Seating-wise, not so much. But
a lot of luxury seating in that building.
Yeah. It's a big room, man. It's a big room. But anyway, they'll play each other. 7 of the 14 Southeastern Conference schools invited to the NCAA tournament. Well, I guess 13 were invited, right? 1 automatically qualified, Florida.
Yes.
But 7 of them.
Anyway.
So half made it through. And you and I were talking last week, like what would be the acceptable number of men's programs to advance into the Sweet 16? And what would be deemed failure? For failure, 3 or fewer. I think I only picked 4 to advance. I can't. I'll double check. I left my. Well, I can get it on the computer, but I left my. I left my handwritten bracket at home today. Sorry, but 7 made it, and then you said I think 6 or better is an acceptable number based on seeds and things like that. And I can't. I mean, I guess A&M was a 4.
A&M was a 4. Yep. So they failed to meet seed expectations.
They didn't get through. But other than that, I think everybody that made it through, you feel like should have made it through.
Yeah, because then you got 2 that played above seed expectation,
right,
with Arkansas and Ole Miss.
I had Arkansas losing to St. John's. I did have them winning, and I think I wrote down in my notes with a question mark, Ole Miss most impressive, question mark, simply because of the way they were just dominant against Iowa State yesterday. Really, to a large degree, Arkansas was dominating St. John's on Saturday, and then St. John's decided to lock it down and play some defense for a little bit, and it made a difference, but not quite enough.
They couldn't score.
Florida was on the ropes, and by the way, Dan Hurley got himself in a little bit of trouble, guys. I also wrote down in my notes, Dan Hurley pulls a Dan Hurley in postgame. But
sore loser.
Well, he's just, and I thought Dan Patrick kind of nailed it this morning. And I agree. And you and I have discussed this before, and I'm sure countless others have across the country the last few years as he's risen to prominence. Dan Hurley. This is who he is, and I'll give him that. He does. We talk sometimes about people. Whatever we're talking about, no filter. Dan Hurley is someone that has no filter. And it's working for him, so it's hard to argue with it, I suppose. It just people don't like it. It's just he's a jerk, man. I mean, that's just, I don't know what else to say. Even yesterday when he was crying, and I believed him too. I don't think that's fake. That's not crocodile tears when he's talking about guys that aren't going to be there anymore. You do have a bond. You do grow to love them, and you will miss them, and they have given you a lot. And all those things can and are in a large degree true. But anyway, so Florida takes care of UConn. Tennessee's looking good. Again, Mississippi, I thought, very impressive. Only the second time in school history for the Ole Miss Rebels to make the Sweet 16. So that's a big deal. But nearly half the field is Southeastern Conference schools. And again, we do have an all-SEC matchup with Kentucky and Tennessee. And is that it?
In terms of all SEC matchups?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Now
There are potential.
Yeah, now there's potentials. Yeah, obviously, if you can get them one. I've got Tennessee winning that and going to the Final Four. How you doing on your bracket overall?
Still pretty far behind nationally, but there is a pathway for me to even win my bracket group that I'm in with friends and family. There is a pathway, especially if Kentucky beats Tennessee. I'll bite the bullet because I had Tennessee in the Elite Eight, but 3 of my 4 Final Four still in there. 6 of my 8 Elite Eight teams still in there. You rack up a lot of points that way.
I was
national champion.
I was very happy. Please don't anybody take this the wrong way, okay? Because I told y'all how I fill out my bracket, but I'll remind you again. When I am ready to fill, I only do one. All right. I know some people like on the ESPN thing, you can do 25. Like I'm not taking the time to do 25 bleeping brackets. Come on, man. I do one bracket, and I did the same thing for the women's tournament, and it takes me about 2 minutes because once I start, I just start writing, and I go. All right.
You let the spirit move you.
I went 28-4 in the first round. I didn't get one game wrong in the East region. And I was I was very happy about that. And at one point on Saturday, I was up to 90, like in the top 9. Basically, I was inside the top 0.4% of players. Now, it's come back down to earth a little bit. I'm at 94.3 today. I was at 99.6. I was like, all right. I'm going to win some money. I don't even know what you win. What do you win if you win the ESPN thing? Not that I'm going to win.
Well, if you win the whole, you win the whole thing. I mean, sometimes they have like cars you can win. Like they'll dangle a pretty cool. Like,
what if I finish like 1.2 millionth out of 28 million? Do I get like a Stephen A. Smith T-shirt? Like how's that work?
They should.
Something.
I would feel gratified with a Stephen A. Smith T-shirt if I finished like in a certain percentile.
I'm like Carl and Caddyshack, a little something, for the effort.
A button would be cool.
Something, yeah.
Like a little button I could like put on my shirt.
But I did all right. But then it fell back to earth over the weekend. So, but I'm still in good shape.
Oh, if you're in the 90th percentile and above, man, you're kicking tail.
Yeah. So, but again, I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's because of my amazing basketball picking prowess and my deep knowledge of men's basketball. My women's tournament.
Subliminally.
Now, my women's tournament, again, today concludes the second round, so it's still a little bit in flux, but it's not nearly as good. I went very chalk heavy on the women's side of things, somewhat coincidentally, but I think in the women's bracket, I'm in like the 60% something. It's not very good.
Yeah, I think mine's probably in the 70s. Last time I checked, it was like mid-70s.
I'll check. There's some games going on right now. Looking at Illinois and Texas right now, and Texas is running away from the Illini in the third quarter. They're up by 19 points.
That engine took a quarter to get started.
Yeah, kind of like Carolina's yesterday. Took a half.
Too. Yeah, it took the half to get started.
But then that third quarter was fantastic. Dawn Staley's team moving on. We'll talk a lot about that for you throughout the day. We got Gamecock men's basketball news. As well as some football recruiting news to discuss. And, of course, the incredible disappointment of the baseball team going to Fayetteville and not just being swept, but being thoroughly dominated. Coach Maneri will be with us for his regular visit coming up at 5:15 today, and we'll get into a few of these things. Look, I don't know where people's individual panic meters are with the baseball team. I'll just say this. In full disclosure, I was at a parents' weekend event, so I kept up as best I could, but I will not tell you that I watched, the 5 innings of baseball because they got run ruled on Friday.
That's about all you need to know for that one.
Yeah. And Paul, even in postgame, saying, I don't think I've been run ruled before. How many times has Carolina been run ruled, especially in conference play? It can't be
definitely the first time since I've been here.
But here's the thing I'll say. First off, I will never, and I've made mention of this for years and years, since before Elijah and I were working together, knew each other, many of you that have been listening to me in this town for a long time. I will never let go of the basic expectation every season for this program, and that is you should expect to host in the NCAA baseball tournament. Now, that means you're one of the 16 best schools in the country. That's becoming harder and harder to do, but you can't let go of the expectation. In a lot of years, you will not hit that expectation. Then you have to ask yourself why. But a secondary expectation for the program, whether it's mine or anybody else's, and you can have your individuals the way you want to. Some people expect South Carolina to be a super regional team every year. That's asking a lot more. That's expecting to be in the Sweet 16 every year, if you will. And there was a time when that was the case. I promise you. But that said, Elijah, and you and I discussed this morning, if you are not one of the top 48 schools in the country to get into this tournament, and when I don't say, well, Jay, there's 64. South Carolina is never going to be a 4 seed. I want think of it. Most of you know this, but just for the equivalent, since we're right smack in the middle of the basketball tournaments, a 4 seed in baseball is the equivalent of a 13, 14, 15, or 16 in basketball. And schools at South Carolina's level, at the power level, aren't going to be one of those. So in other words, you need to be a 1 seed, a 2 seed, or a 3 seed. A 1 seed you host, and a 2 or a 3, you're going somewhere like, you do in a lot of years. But if you're not one of those 48 schools and you're South Carolina, then it's a massive failure. And then you've got to figure out why. Chad Holbrook in 5 years made 2 supers and hosted a 3rd year and got beat by Maryland. But in the other 2 seasons, they missed the playoffs, and that's why Chad got fired. Mark Kingston missed the playoffs a couple of times. One of the years, it was because this ball club was completely decimated by injury, and everybody took that into account, and he was given a reprieve. And even though last year they made the tournament, y'all all saw it. It kind of fell flat, and it was time for a change. I'm not trying to put too much on Paul right now where anything is, and it's March the 24th. So you're going to have another series in March. But this week, y'all, you got a big game tomorrow, which, by the way, pun intended somewhat, you got thrown a big curveball yesterday when Jarvis Evans had to start because he was supposed to start tomorrow night up in Charlotte against Chapel Hill. Then you got the best team in the country coming to town this weekend. And if you think Arkansas scores a bunch of runs, go look at some of the results of the Tennessee Volunteers.
And how many home runs they hit. They don't necessarily play small ball. That's not a Tony La Russa favored team.
And this team, South Carolina, is prone to having bad early innings, long innings against them. And oftentimes with 2 outs, the bullpen faltered mightily this weekend. Starting pitching wasn't good enough. I'm not predicting anything yet because there's more than enough time to turn it around. But you're not very good.
Yeah. As we sit here right now on March 24th.
You're not very good. You're 1-5 in conference play. You can sit here and say you should be 2-4. And yesterday it was 4-4 in the 8th inning, and then all of a sudden it was 11-4 in the 8th inning.
It's the implosions that really bite, right? Because you are competitive, and like in the games against ranked teams, in over half of them, you are very competitive, and you're in a position to do something. Yeah. And then the final score gets out of hand, and it's like, how the hell does it get this much out of hand? And
you've just got to figure out now what you can do within your current structure. This team is not decimated by injury. I don't know how long Dylan Eskew will be on the shelf. I know you hoped going into the season that you'd have Jersenbeck back. You don't, and that ship, unfortunately, has sailed.
You don't and you won't.
Yeah, you won't. Ever, I think. Because if I'm Eli Jersenbeck and his family, if I have an opportunity to pitch again, I'm going to go ahead and do it at the next level.
Yeah.
There's no reason to come back to college at this point, especially at his age, more than anything. You just got, somebody will give you a flyer and you go take a chance at the next level once you're healed up again. Becker has faltered. You're trying here and there. You get spots of good pitching, but you also have spots of just incredible mistakes. I thought the way Paul talked about Brandon Stone the other day was interesting. Like, hey, he was just trying to make too many perfect pitches, and that ends up getting you beat. So we got a lot to talk about when it comes to baseball. Paul will be with us coming up in about 2 hours, and we'll get more of y'all's reaction to that. Got some basketball to talk about. Dawn Staley's team making an 11th straight Sweet 16. We'll discuss that and more when the postgame show returns. It's a fun time of year if you like doing yard work. And if you don't like doing yard work, it's at least a good time of year to get yourself into Cato's Power Equipment for all the latest in mowers, edgers, blowers, trimmers, saws, all the accessories you need, or a fantastic service department. Maybe you've had that mower that you'll just love. But it's time to get the blades sharpened, get that engine tuned up. Service department can have you in and out quick. And those of you who may be in the truck right now from one job to the next as professional landscapers, also a terrific time for you to see Cato's. Whether it's something new that you need, maybe your business is growing, or you get that equipment fixed up so that you can get to more jobs and make more money. Whether you do it for yourself, whether you do it for a living, Cato's has great sales, service, and advice. Love my new Toro battery-powered equipment. Can't wait to keep using it throughout the spring. Stop in and see them for yourself. Beautiful redone showroom, 4012 West Beltline Boulevard. Always online, catospowerequipment.com. Twenty minutes after 3 o'clock on a Monday afternoon. Welcome back into the postgame show. Jay and Elijah with you. We could all use a chance to get lucky at some point in time.
We've all been there.
Yep.
Hey, luck helps you win in March.
Yeah, because that's all it is, man. We were having some fun talking the other day, you, me, and Alan Cole, when Alan joined us on Thursday. I think it was about people, maybe Terry, who was it? Talking about people that are trying to go over.
Oh, the imperfect bracket?
Yeah. It's like you can't do that either.
That is almost impossible.
You can't.
Yeah.
You can go pick 32 games
Incorrectly.
Like you could say, I think they're going to lose, and I hear you.
Because here's part of picking a winner, Jay Phillips, for games. Somebody has to lose. And this is a lesson that Archie Miller learned the hard way this year. Karl Ravitch learned the hard way that there is a winner and a loser to each basketball game. And by proxy of picking a loser, that means you're also picking a winner. So doing the whole imperfect bracket equally as hard.
You know, at least with Archie, who's the head coach at Rhode Island, again, I just think,
hard.
Yeah. But for Ravitch, Ravitch tried to say, it was tongue-in-cheek. Nah, Carl.
Nice try.
I heard it. I heard the whole context. I heard like the 1 minute version, not the 10 seconds. And anyway.
And then what's worse about Carl is that Archie Miller already got blasted for it on the internet.
Right.
And Karl Ravitch probably isn't the most online person.
He's not paying attention.
He's not the most online person, but like I found it by accident. It's just on the feed, man, and I follow a lot of college basketball people. That was the running joke in college basketball for weeks.
Yeah.
And he still used it on air.
Yeah.
Brutal.
He meant it. Anyway, in the meantime, South Carolina women's basketball moving on to the Sweet 16. They don't know their opponent yet. I do feel badly for Maryland and Alabama. It'd be one thing if they had played after South Carolina in the same venue or some such, but they are playing like 27 hours after South Carolina does, and then they still have to travel.
Yeah.
Now, if Bama ends up winning tonight in College Park, Bama will love that because these games are in Birmingham. And I don't have to tell most of you that Tuscaloosa and Birmingham are only about a half hour to 45 minutes away from each other, depending on traffic that side.
Man, they can bring a really good crowd if they realize that they have a women's basketball team. If somebody can spread the word that, their women's basketball team is a thing and plays. Because I'm half convinced the only sport they know around there is football.
Football. I think they know they have a men's basketball team now. I think.
It only took going to a Final Four.
Yeah, I know. They like gymnastics over there. I think I've told you the story before. 1 year, I forget which one, in Birmingham. 1 year, it was announced during the week of media days while we were in Birmingham that the longtime, very successful gymnastics coach was stepping down. That dominated the local news that week.
Good for them.
I remember
for acknowledging that.
We had this place where we could go get breakfast, and they had the local news on. And I'm telling you, man, that was the story. Which is fine. I'm not here to judge.
That's big. That's big news, and it should be.
Yeah,
it should be.
Yeah,
it's big news.
I wish Carolina had gymnastics. I think Clemson's getting ready to start a team.
That's pretty cool.
Anyway, if they can convince them. But Maryland and Bama will play tonight in College Park, and that winner will see South Carolina later this week. And I don't even think we know what time yet because I think that ESPN waits till the last minute. They like to see the matchups.
The same way.
And then they'll tell you when you're going to play.
Same way Paramount and CBS do, which is why you don't know any Sweet 16, or you don't know any Sweet 16 matchups until last night.
But regardless, Carolina, certainly in the second half, a whole lot better. Cut 3 on today's list, please, sir. Here is Coach Dawn Staley on her team's performance after halftime.
Yes, I mean, it's a little unnerving because it's not, how you envision execution. I thought we were getting great looks. They just wouldn't fall. So, for us is if we're going to get the same type of looks, we're probably going to be in good shape because we're not going to, Chloe and Fagan aren't going to be. I think they were 0 for 10, 0 for. And then I think Joyce made one layup, and that was off of a broken play. Lay got a steal and tossed it back to her. And she made we're a very efficient post group of bigs. So sooner or later, somebody's going to get on course to do what they normally do. I think we settled in. I think our defense got a lot better in the third quarter and afforded us a lead to the point where we just held on and got the win.
Listen, here's the score by quarter, okay, in what was a 11-point victory. South Carolina down after 12-9. They lost the second quarter, won the second quarter 16-14, but were down at the half by a point. Third quarter, though, 26-14. and to Don's point, in the fourth, 13-13. I do think it's fair and right to give Indiana a lot of credit for coming out with a proper game plan, doing what they could to take Carolina. I don't want to say take Carolina out of their game, but at least disrupt the flow, as Dawn said. Just give them some bad looks and things like that.
Make their paint touches hard.
Yeah.
That's what they did for an entire half.
Yeah, and I just think too often, and I'm not being critical, whether it's fans, national observers, again, Dawn has built such a behemoth that it's just, you just come to expect, like South Carolina was a 22.5-point favorite. You just expect them to cover spreads, whatever the spread might be. And when they don't, it's like, oh, what happened to South Carolina? It's just, so I do want to give proper credit, in my estimation, to a quality Big Ten opponent in the second round of the NCAA tournament for executing the game plan as best they could until such time as South Carolina's immense talent level finally took over. But really, there was only one quarter where they were, and that was a 12-point quarter disparity in an 11-point win, Elijah.
Yeah. I mean, they scored more points in that third quarter than they did the entire first half.
Yeah.
I mean, and here's the thing, too. Indiana had a really good game plan because Chloe, Sanaya, and Joyce don't go 1 for 10 in the first quarter on accident.
Right.
And at the same time, that created the way they hounded Carolina on paint touches kind of allow you naturally to give up some three-point looks, and Indiana did. And there were a lot of missed shots from people not named Bree Hall, right? Like, I mean, shoot, even Mylasia got in the lane and airballed a floater, and Tessa, I think, hit the backboard on 1-3 so hard it might have cracked it. But, like, those are things like you'll take those shots any day of the week because they're not always going to do that, right? And guess what happened in the second half? You got similar shots, and they knocked them down, right? That's one thing about having the experience that they do, and that's one thing I talked with Tessa about, with the experience that you have, even just as a sophomore. After last year, how much does that help when you get in a game where nothing's falling, the opponent is doing a great job of taking away one of your strengths, and you have to go out there and take control in the second half? And Tessa and everybody else I talked to after the game said that makes a world of difference.
Mm-hmm.
They can't panic, and they know they can't because they know that if they continue to play their game, make some adjustments in terms of how you're getting your shots, you're going to be right back in it. And that's exactly what happened. And not only did they get back in it, they took control because they were in control for really, I know Indiana cut it to single digits a couple times, but realistically, Indiana had no more control over the outcome of that game as soon as South Carolina went on that early third quarter run.
I know you were courtside and back in the locker room afterwards. I have a question for you about a couple of late game situations. I want to see if you agree with my assessment of them. We have more on that, and we have some men's basketball news to get to as well. A busy Monday postgame show rolling on. Okay. Integrated Media is the Midland's best when it comes to home theater installation, service, just knowledge and capability, but it's even more than home theater. And I remind people of that a lot. I almost want to say they're your leader in home technology because, yes, your TV, your AV system, you want all that to be top notch. I get it. And they do that. One room, whole house, indoors, outdoors. You've heard me. But how about indoors and outdoors when it comes to home security? They can get that done for you, too. How about the indoors, at least, when it comes to controlling your thermostat from the Control4 app on your phone or tablet? Or even something as simple as you having gone to a big box store, bought a video alarm system, and then saying, uh-oh, I don't think I can put this in. I know they say on the box it's easy. I'm not so sure. Call Integrated Media. They do all that for you and more. 803-948-8327. The best in home technology. Integrated Media. Talking some Carolina basketball, men's and women's to get into. We've already mentioned a little bit about an incredibly disappointing weekend for the baseball team, and we'll have more on that coming up for you when Coach Maneri joins Elijah and me for his Monday visit at 5:15. And if you didn't hear, a fluke injury has further added to the consternation, for lack of a better term, right now for the baseball team. Dylan Eskew was hit on the head by a home run ball while doing some bullpen drills on Saturday.
This is, if this doesn't put you in the front of the running for the Murphy's Law Team of the Year, I don't know if anything will put you in the front of the ring. I want to know who is in first at that point.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. And so Jarvis Evans had to start yesterday. Jarvis did all right, I thought, but we'll get into more of that in just a little bit. So there were a couple of late game, and this is me observing. Okay, you were there. This is not judgment or like, why would she do that? But Dawn doesn't often use timeouts unless she really needs to. And there were a couple of late game situations when it felt like Carolina had it wrapped up, but that, if certain things don't go your way, it could get dicey again. I don't think it was going to yesterday, but she called 2 late timeouts. And I remember telling my wife, Dawn's teaching right there. Dawn's not coaching right now. Dawn's teaching, because later it might not be where you're up a couple of possessions in that moment. And I was expecting Indiana, quite honestly, Elijah, I was expecting Indiana. I even said, why don't they press more? Why don't they try to get some turnovers here? And it felt like Indiana just, maybe they're not good at that. Some team,
Yeah, they're definitely not. A little more conservative defensively.
Yeah, and so that was probably it. But Dawn, I could, did you get that vibe that those, because I didn't feel like they were, in a normal environment, whatever that might be.
One not in March.
Yeah, they, you would. I don't think you'd see Dawn call those, but I think they were probably. Were they in your mind, or did you get a better sense courtside that they were working on certain very late game inbounding situations? Because to me, that's what it felt like. Dawn's teaching right now. She's calling a couple timeouts where she might not even call one, and she called 2. Yeah. So I just felt like that was part of what was going on late there.
Especially if you have them, use them.
Yeah.
Especially if you want to bring a point across, or you want them to be more lasered focus on a specific detail of what is happening in the game there that might be applicable to a game in the future. And part of that, too, was the closing lineup wasn't normally out there. Malaysia didn't have her best game, and Dawn didn't play her a ton of minutes. I want to say Malaysia for the game only played 10. And Lay's usually out there in those late game situations. The lineup that she stuck with in the fourth quarter was the lineup that was giving them the best minutes that game. And that's one thing that I like about Dawn, is I think she's really good at managing minutes. I think her best attribute as a coach is her ability to manage minutes and get a feel of what lineup is working in each given moment. That's one reason why, when that's really at the beginning of the season, the storyline to keep up with this team is what they're going to look lineup-wise throughout the year, because they are so loaded. Because you don't need Dawn or anybody else to tell you, because the opposing coaches will do it, will point it out voluntarily. They have a lot of McDonald's All-Americans. They got a lot of star power on this team. So managing those can be difficult, right? Managing what lineup works best in a certain matchup, or throughout the flow of the game, figuring out what lineup is going to be best against that specific opponent is something that even the best coaches in the history of this game have had issues with. It's one thing John Calipari for years at Kentucky would have these loaded lineups, and he couldn't figure out the best combinations and the best way to unlock a lot of those players. That's one of the reasons why his career at Kentucky ended as sour as it did, because he lost that he lost that pitch in the arsenal, so to speak. Maybe not his fastball, but his ability maybe to maximize these lineups.
All I heard was Arsenal, but go ahead.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's not a sports team, I guess, or anything of note. But one thing Dawn has absolutely mastered as a head coach is just her ability to know that and have a feel to what works best late in games. And I feel like with maybe the combination she had on the floor, she realized against certain teams that deploy certain defensive strategies, you might have to roll with that lineup maybe a little more than you did in the regular season, and pointing a couple of really detailed things out, it probably is more beneficial long-term than it would have just been in that game.
On that note, give us cut 6 on our list today here, please, sir. Dawn Staley, post-game on keeping her team prepared in this tournament.
I think it's really important to balance the rest part of it, balance the active recovery, balance the film sessions, and balance really how much the players are locked in. I mean, we read the room when it comes to them. If they're focused in, our time on the court is probably cut in half. If they're not, we'll probably have more film sessions. I think we did one drill yesterday where we just went up and down. It was at the very beginning. It's a conditioning drill that we do every day before a game. And then everything else was just half court, just making sure that we're able to execute what we need to execute. They are a fine oil machine. They run their stuff. They execute it. They got you working on both sides of the court when we're on defense. Just well-rounded and calculated and deliberate in what they want to do. So they're exhausted. I know our players are exhausted, but it takes that to beat a team like Indiana.
Again, I'm glad she said that there. I thought Indiana maybe played about as well as they could play, Elijah. I do want to give them a lot of credit for how they played yesterday, and I do think that was part. I don't say it was lost,
especially.
Yeah,
they executed a game plan really well.
I thought they played well, and look, Joyce played 23 minutes. Malaysia only played 10. Tessa 19, so Tessa played about half the game. Joyce a little bit more. Malaysia did not, and for a team that leads the nation in bench scoring, South Carolina got 19 points off the bench yesterday. I don't know that that's a big concern, but you don't want to see it become a trend.
Right. And thankfully, one game doesn't a trend make.
Right.
And also, I think that's maybe beneficial too. Again, going back to the closing lineup thing, maybe having more starters in there if they haven't done that as much during the season, maximizing what that looks like and figuring out what it might be. Say, like if, Tessa and Malaysia aren't shooting very well, but the starting lineup is producing like it was. Like yesterday, your best three-point shooter was Bree Hall. Mm-hmm. And you needed her to be able to knock down some shots in transition to be able to help you create that separation. There was that one stretch in the game where she hit a couple big ones, and it really, the crowd was as loud as I've heard it all season long, maybe the exception of Raven Johnson's steal against LSU. That probably was the loudest if we're splitting hairs here. But sometimes it takes finding out what the groove is. And again, I think that's definitely Dawn's. As a coach, that's her fastball, right? Is knowing that and having a feel for it probably better than anybody in America.
I'm going to look it up. I don't have it in front of me, and I just thought about it as I was looking. But speaking of Raven, she played 29 minutes yesterday. Is that the most minutes she's played this season, you think?
That's a really good question.
Because I was looking at her average is 23.8 this season. So that's significantly more than her average. I want to find out how many times she played more than 29 minutes. A little bit more on Dawn's team. Again, we do have a lot of developing news around the men's basketball team we'll be discussing with you throughout the afternoon. You're listening to the Monday postgame show. Welcome back in. Final few minutes of our first hour. Coming up next hour, lots to get to around the men's basketball tournament. Some Gamecock football news to discuss. I wasn't going to necessarily go here, but I will real quick. And I've done this kind of thing before, and I know I've said this. I like Jeff Goodman. Most of you know Jeff used to, for many years, work for CBS. Now he's basically doing his own thing. But does a lot around college basketball. And if you agree with him and disagree with me, that's fine. But I'm going to tell you, but he just put out, during that first hour of our show, he put out a tweet. There are already more than 500 men's basketball players in the portal, and we're not even through the first day of its official opening. That's one sentence. Then he basically, hits a paragraph and says just one word, ridiculous. I'll give you all a second for those of you who agree. Okay. I'm not saying that I disagree overall in theory on whether it's ridiculous or not.
Its organization is one thing. Its appliance is another.
But the way Jeff paints this is, I can't tell if he's taking a swipe at the players or the system. But I'm going to, and I just threw out a tweet that said coaches are too. Now, you're not going to have 500 coaches because there's not 500 D1 jobs.
Not 500 head coaches. But how many assistant coaches are already out and about, too?
But, again, we don't seem to think it's ridiculous when coaches do it, but it is when kids do it. What about commitment? I mean, look at some of these coaches that have only been at a spot for a year.
Oh, dude. I mean, how fast did Nico Medved take the Minnesota job?
Yeah.
You telling me they didn't talk before this tournament?
But at least Nico's been at Colorado State for a few years, right?
Yep.
But like Ben McCollum's been at Drake year. How long? Sean Miller's been back in Cincinnati, but at Xavier for 3 seasons, right? Because that was the whole. We all know that story. Somebody else that who am I blanking on that was only somewhere for a year and then just went somewhere else? I'll think of it in a second.
Yeah. You said McCollum's a 1-year guy.
I'll think of it in a second. But anyway, again, we don't do this to coaches. I want a system where we can all agree that year after year after year after year, you can't transfer.
I think about Darren DeVries.
Thank you. West Virginia. To where do you go?
Indiana. And what I was told, that was in the works.
Yeah, you
for
told
about
me.
half a season.
Yeah. What'd you hear that maybe Mrs. Coach was
apparently miserable in Morgantown.
Okay.
That's what I've heard. I don't know them personally.
Yeah, no.
But that's what's kind of swimming in some circles.
That's fair. So I mean, I get it if you don't like it. I don't like it. I'm not here to go, why don't you like it? It's awesome. It's not. But again, I reiterate, you can't restrict the rights of free American adults without their consent. That's the law. And the NCAA has been beaten up and down in courts all over our great land, including at the highest court of the land, over this. And that's why we are where we are.
Mm-hmm.
But I have a real hard time with a lot of fans across the country that seem to think the only people that should have their rights restricted are college athletes, solely for the purpose of a fan base's entertainment. And that I will not agree with. I don't like the system. I don't know where the middle is in terms of finding some form of collective bargaining when you're not bargaining with employees. But that's where we have to get if you want it to be legal to restrict them. Because if you don't get there, then you can't do it because it's against the law. I just, that's the thing to me. It's against the law. They want Congress to write some kind of law with some form of antitrust protection for colleges. Okay. But it's going to get challenged if it's restrictive against free American adults who didn't sign up for it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not hard to figure out. Do you write it into some NIL contracts? Perhaps. And then that will be consent, won't it, for that individual. But collectively, that's going to be a lot harder, in my opinion. So I want to get, and you and I were talking this morning about a lot of things here. You know, there's a lot of people complaining about this tournament this year. Oh, it's just too chalk heavy and not enough upsets. All right. You know, I think it's because the tournament is older. And I think the transfers have migrated more through their years into the ranks of the best. You know, but tell that to Rick Pitino's 2-seed St. John's, right? Or Buzz Williams 4-seed Texas A&M. I mean, teams are still getting beat. You know, but you might not say that Arkansas is a big upset or anything.
They're not a scrappy underdog.
Yeah. So, 50 years ago, they finally let freshmen play. And 10 years ago, we were all complaining there's too many one and dones. Now we're complaining there's too many fifth-year guys. Like, what do we want here? Things will always evolve. And ultimately, this will work its way out.
And if we had a ton of upsets every year, then they become expected. They wouldn't be upsets
Yeah, then it's not an upset anymore. Exactly. Lots more to do. Hour 2. Got some Gamecock basketball and football news you need to hear. We'll be right back. 4 o'clock Monday. Welcome back into the postgame show along with Elijah Campbell. I'm Jay Phillips. Good to be back in the capital city. I was away this weekend for a little parents' weekend with one of my daughters at college. Telling Elijah about driving through not clouds of pollen, but very visible in the air is the pollen right now.
Quite the dusting of pollen.
And more than what's the level above dusting?
Ooh. Because
like
you can go from dusting to dust bowl.
Well, if it's snow, like dusting and then like what?
Dusting a flurry.
Flurry?
Yeah, I think flurry.
So I think we're having a pollen flurry.
Which just sounds disgusting.
Yeah. Well, it is.
That audibly does not connect
sounds,
with me.
looks, feels.
Makes me feel disgusting.
Yeah. If you think hard enough about all the pollen in the air, you probably can just have a reaction.
I know my body definitely does.
Even my dog, bless her heart, my lab, and she's prone to getting some. Our vet has told us this, but like it was funny. My daughter was keeping our dogs this weekend, and she's like, I think Truvy is her name, and I think Truvy's got like a pretty bad pollen allergy. But then she said, but I kept telling her to quit like sticking her head in everything.
She doesn't know. She doesn't know what she's allergic to or not. She just knows
she's
sometimes
just sniffing.
I go
So
outside
she's
and I
sniffing
start
all
itching.
around because dogs sniff, right? So as you sniff and smell and there's pollen all over the ground, what are you doing? You just, I don't want to make like a Scarface joke here, but you.
You do kind of channel your inner Tony Montana a little bit in
Bless
terms
her
of
heart.
stuff going up your nose.
I do know this though. You got to be careful, but you apparently you can give dogs like regular Zyrtec. You can't give them the Zyrtec that has the added like decongestants or antihistamines in it or whatever. Mm-hmm. Or maybe not antihistamines because I guess there's some of that in a Zyrtec. But anyway, there's one of them you can't give them. But if you just give them, you look it up, or you probably should call your vet to make sure before you do it. But apparently you can give your dog Zyrtec or the equivalent from your local drugstore.
To help with, with
the allergies. Yeah. So just be careful. And, don't say, well, Jay Phillips said I could give my dog a whole bunch of Zyrtec. Look it up first. Do it by weight. Or, again, if you have a question, call your vet.
Consult the vet, yes.
Yeah, but I have consulted my vet, the great William Otis. Shout out. But anyway, we'll see. But pollen is bad. But nice to be home.
Yeah, pollen sucks.
We were in Athens, and I am a big REM fan. Not as big a Widespread Panic fan, which shocks a lot of people because I'm a jam band guy. I like Widespread, but I do not like Widespread the way I like Fish or the Dead or the Almonds or String Cheese Incident or something like that. But for the first time, Elijah Campbell, yours truly went to the 40 Watt Club in Athens, Georgia.
Okay. Reviews?
The club itself is very cool. Now, we were there for like a parents' weekend event, so I wasn't there to see a band. The band that they had was good, but I wasn't there to see that band, and I don't know their name. And they were playing for, both parents and kids. So I will say this. For what is basically your average just, open room concert hall that holds a few hundred people, and you can probably imagine, it should be, Jay, like the sound system is amazing for a small venue. But for those that don't know, like 40 Watt, and a lot of you probably do, but 40 Watt is where REM got their start. Guadalcanal Diary got their start. They were big in the 80s. A lot of other bands that have, and tons of bands still make their way through there on a regular basis. I don't know that the Athens scene has created quite as many big bands. When you create REM and the B-52s, who are two very different bands that like each other a lot, and then Widespread Panic after that, you're doing, and there's plenty of other. Don't anybody say what about so and so? There's plenty, but it was cool, man. It's one of those places where you feel the vibe of like, all right, like this is where people were saying there's like, clubs like that, like the Whiskey A Go Go in L.A. or CBGB's in New York, and I don't want to directly equate them because it's Athens, Georgia, and that's not me knocking Athens, but. Los Angeles, New York City.
Different magnitudes here.
Athens, GA. Like, it's different. But it was cool just to, be in there and see it. So that was fun.
Good to be in a place with a lot of history.
Yeah, and I took a picture in front of just a little piece of art about REM. So that was fun. That was fun.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was a good time. Good time. But good to be back here in Columbia, South Carolina. All right, we got a developing news around Carolina men's basketball that we need to get to. And I'll remind all of you, too, we're not avoiding baseball. We've already talked some baseball, and Coach Maneri will be with Elijah and me coming up in about an hour and about 5:15. 5:15. We now know that Nick Pringle is the latest Gamecock men's basketball player to enter the transfer portal today. We knew that Austin Hero was going to go in. Today it opened, so today it becomes official. Zach Davis is in as basically a local kid. And Arden Conyers, definitely a local kid in the portal. So Hero, Davis, Conyers, Pringle. Will there be more? We don't know, but yeah, probably. The question I have, Elijah, for you, although it's more of a rhetorical question right now, is for any of these kids, like Hero, we talked about last week. Look, good kid, great family, brother is a star at the next level, but Austin's not. He wasn't going to play here, and that's go find a place to play. But Zach Davis plays.
Starts.
Yeah, I mean, Zach Davis. That one kind of surprised me. I'm not going to lie, and I'll get back to that in a second. Conyers, I thought, was showing flashes of what he could be, and I think I even asked you a couple of times, why don't we see more of that? It seems like he would come in, do some things, and then just disappear back to the bench. And Pringle, was on a great team at Alabama, didn't really find his role there, and never really seemed to fully adjust to a role in Columbia either. Mm-hmm. So, again, as much as you feel like you want to answer it with the things that go ahead. But I wonder how much of this is exit interview, two-way street type decision making.
I feel like a lot of it is. And based off the discussions I've had with numerous people regarding numerous players, there may be, I don't want to say like flat disagreements about what their role is going to be, but maybe there are better basketball fits for them elsewhere in terms of asking them to do things offensively that maybe better suit their skill set. And I know that's been, potentially a common denominator for a few guys. And that obviously plays a role because you only have so much of what you can do at the college game in terms of just time, right? Everybody's on an eligibility clock the minute you step on a campus. And for some, like a player like Zach, I think is an example. He's got 1 year left. If there is an offense that may be better suited for his skill set, why wouldn't you take your final year to try to see what you can do if you have dreams of playing professionally?
And let's expound on that, because you and I were talking about him this morning. This is a very active player. And to me, checks so many boxes of what an SEC basketball player can be. And maybe right now at South Carolina, it's a little more of a half-court offense. It's a little more staid relative to a lot. I asked you, just in thinking about him, once I heard that he was in the portal, I was like, man, I don't know if he'll go start over there, but I thought about Mississippi. And I thought about that Chris Beard system. And, could Zach be a 15-minute-a-game kind of guy in that system where Chris doesn't want to let off the gas, but you can't keep the gas on and have dudes playing 35 minutes.
In a 5-man rotation.
Yeah, you can't do that.
It's not possible.
Yeah, but so, and I have no idea that he's going there or anything. I'm throwing those kind of systems out in terms of what that would ideally look like for a kid like that. And I mean, I don't know where he's going to go, but I think that one, look, you try not to be too emotional anymore as a fan with attachment because this is just the current world we live in. But this one, I would say maybe just stings a little bit more, if only because he is local-ish. I mean, he grew up about an hour away. And he's I think he's a good basketball player. I don't know what his professional hopes are, not NBA. Yeah. But I think he might have a potential overseas,
Absolutely. He can make himself some good money playing overseas.
Yeah, I mean, you can make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year doing that. But I don't know. don't know where that one's going to take him. But let's talk more about what he is capable of, maybe in your estimation, relative to what he was doing or being asked to do.
I think his best traits are his ability to cut off ball. And I feel like there was not as much activity off ball. We kind of talked about that a lot during the season. Maybe a lack of off ball activity, maybe not highlighting some of the skill sets of the players there. And at this point, with 1 year of college left, you need to be highlighted as much as possible and be able to put up the numbers necessary to grab the attention of teams overseas and put out tape where you can play in that style that fits you best. That way, wherever you do go play can utilize you at your best. I feel like Zach Davis is best in the open floor. He's not going to be a spot up shooter. He's not going to be a guy that's running off of screens to get threes. And he's not going to be a primary ball handler in your offense. But what he is a really good cutter, and he's a guy who has incredible God-given athleticism and an ability to work to improve his game so where he could be a little more offensively versatile. Had some issues with turnovers at times this year, but I think putting him in a lot of those ball handling situations, which South Carolina did out of necessity in the games that Jamari Thomas wasn't healthy and able to play, probably put him at a disadvantage in a few games. But I think that's he can get into a system kind of like what you're alluding to, where there is a lot of off-ball movement in terms of cutting to the basket, slashing that way, and getting out in the open floor of a team that grabs a rebound and immediately is looking to push. I'm not saying that like Arizona is the best fit, but an offense like what Arizona and Tommy Lloyd likes to do, where they immediately grab a rebound and they want to get out in transition and they want to get numbers and they want to be able to have the athletes to fly up and down the floor to be able to get more transition buckets, is a place that's a lot more suitable, I think, for Zach and his style of play.
Arden Conyers, again, local kid, flashes. Yeah, I'll get your opinion on why this one, because I thought there was room for growth, a pretty good ceiling that's nowhere close to having been hit yet.
Yeah, because he's got a good shooting form, but he didn't shoot particularly well, especially towards the back end of the season, and his shooting numbers from three did dip below 30%. But there's a lot there to be able to work with. He proved himself as a defender a couple times against really good competition, where he was able to be out on the floor and it not be a minus. I think he's going to be able to fit in a place that has a similar defensive philosophy that Lamont has here, that Wisconsin, Bo Ryan, stay in front of your man, we're not switching. That type of defensive versatility, and somebody, if he goes to a place where they can work on his jump shot and develop that part of his game, he can be a 3-and-D guy at maybe a mid-major level.
I'm just curious as to, and again, I'm not trying to delve too deeply into things, and everybody's got a decision to make personally. That's why I asked you earlier about a two-way street kind of thing, but a lot of the things you just said, I can hear fans going, well, then why wouldn't he stay here and develop?
Because sometimes it just doesn't fit. Like that was a big kind of diatribe I went on Friday's show. Was Kansas is the best example in college basketball right now where fit matters, and that proves that fit matters. Like Kansas had a king's ransom of a haul in the transfer portal this year with Zeke Mayo, who was a lights-out scorer at South Dakota State, or Rylan Griffin, who helped shoot Alabama into the Final Four. A bunch of guys that were really productive at high levels, but they didn't fit from a basketball sense because with DeJuan Harris not really progressing after his sophomore year in terms of just getting a lot better, making an extra jump as an all-around like a scorer to supplement what he does as a point guard, you didn't have a ton of guys who created shots for others. They were really good at creating shots for himself, like A.J. Storr. Great scorer, isn't creating shots for others. And I think that sometimes created a black hole within their offense where you saw them only score 59 points at BYU, a team that's not really locking up a ton of teams defensively. They went through spells during the season. They just couldn't score because from a basketball standpoint, they didn't have enough distributors to be able to kind of feed all of the mouths that they have on offense that do have an ability to score, but maybe need shots created for them. So that's kind of the poster boy example as to why fit matters.
More on the portal movement with Carolina men's basketball. Get ourselves into more on the national scene of this as well. The Monday postgame show rolling on. All right, welcome back in. Halftime show.
Wow. Wow.
Welcome back in. Post-game show.
Is it?
Rolling on. I don't know. It's some radio
Is it
show.
the post-game show?
Here in Columbia. If you could see my face, I can feel it.
Oh, heavens.
I'm sorry.
Well, good thing this is the first time that's at.
I know. I did it last week, actually. That's twice in a week. It had been like a couple of months, I think, since I had done it. I feel like the last time I had done it, we were at Craft and Draft in Irmo. I know I did it out there. I didn't mean to, but I did.
We'll keep you like a basketball player where you get fouls. It's a foul. And if you foul out, you have to miss a segment. Jay Phillips.
I should have to spin that wheel or something, right?
Foul. Yeah.
Sorry.
We'll have a student section in here that's going left, right, with every step you take
Yep.
getting out of the studio. And then they'll do the whole sit down whenever you finally take a seat.
Well, it's the post-game show.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Anyway, where was I? What was I going to say? I was going to say something. Oh, welcome back to the post-game show.
That's one.
Jay and Elijah with you here on a Monday afternoon. All factually correct.
Yes. Verifiable.
Discussing Gamecock men's basketball news. Now 4 players in the transfer portal. And I guess 3 of them are South Carolinians, which is, I don't look, I'm not here. I'm not judging. I'm not anything other than observing and discussing. Like, how dare you, but Nick Pringle is the latest. He's from down in Beaufort, right? Yeah.
Seabrook, I believe.
Okay, well, Beaufort County then.
Yeah.
And Arden Conyers from here in Columbia, Zach Davis, who went to Denmark Oler.
Mm-hmm.
So, look, they all have their decisions to make, and look, Lamont will I know you got a pretty good class coming in, so you were going to have to fill some space or make room for that anyway. I guess the next one, Elijah, and look, this is part of what we do here, so I don't want to take this discussion too far, but I think it's a fair question to ask. A lot of people want to know about Cam Scott. I don't know. You don't know. I think it's a real fair question to ask. Look, for those who would ask me, a lot of the things that I heard is he was, I don't want to say struggling, but he was having some difficulties in adjusting to the amount of defense he was asked to play. And that if you're going to be on the floor, you got to defend. I like the way you put it, and I'll just kind of paraphrase how you've said it. In this kind of system, defending is not optional.
Yep, a non-negotiable.
Yeah, non-negotiable. Thank you. So, is he going in? Look, I don't know where we are. Jeff Goodman, an hour and a half ago, basically put out 500 kids already in the portal. I would suspect by the end of business West Coast time, so let's say 8 p.m. Eastern, will probably be over 1,000.
Mm-hmm.
Just because most of these kids and their families have already made up their mind, and they've all had their exit interviews with their coaches. And the only ones that are left, now you've only got 16 schools left on the men's side that are playing. And some of those kids are going to transfer as well. But for now, they're playing, so you don't know yet. But for everybody else, you probably knew.
I can absolutely verify there was one team in the field of 68 that had a player that absolutely knew he was leaving and knew exactly where he was going before that game even tipped off.
Right.
In this tournament, right? So, and that's the case for a lot of them. And sometimes the coaches, those players, don't know. But there is absolutely, even for some of them that are playing right now, if they are leaving, are again, like you said, already know they are, and some of them may or may not have a destination.
But for Cam Scott, if I'm a fan, I hope not. We talked about Morris Ugasuk, who's been here a couple of years, and I'd like to see him continue to develop. Again, you have a pretty good class coming in. I mean, it's not common to see South Carolina men's basketball have a top 25 class nationally, but Lamont got one. So, you want to see that have a chance to develop. And I understand those things. And that are they, in where he is in his tenure in Columbia, is this freshman class going to be one that better fits what he wants to do? And the answer is I would think yes. However, hoping that 4 new freshmen coming in are going to elevate you in this league, you're going to have to go smack the portal real hard here
to get major contributors,
to get what you need,
because you don't really want them starting.
No,
not in the ideal world. I mean, that's what makes what John Shire is doing at Duke so impressive, because we are in an era where everybody's old. Everybody has starting lineups littered with either seniors or graduate players, right? And then you like the era of the one and done as a major trend in college basketball is for the most part dead. And those teams that start a lot of freshmen aren't usually going to be anywhere remotely close to successful as like what Duke is, right? I mean, you look at their average D1 experience, or they got a couple of guys that are experienced. They brought in from the transfer portal, but none of them have played like with each other as a group, right? Like a lot of the older players they have, like Tyrese Proctor was there for a few years. Sion James is a transfer from Tulane. Malik Brown, a transfer from Syracuse. Mason Gillis, a transfer from Purdue. A lot of these guys, in terms of like minutes continuity as a unit, they have not ever actually played alongside each other. I mean, there's like 2 players on that roster between, Caleb Foster and Tyrese Proctor that have shared a floor with each other. And for them to go 33-3 right now and being right now the number 1 team in most metrics is remarkable. That's hard. That is very, very difficult to do. I don't think he gets enough credit for the job that he's done doing that, but that's not a formula to bank on to be successful year in, year out, especially in a league that, like the SEC, which attracts, as we've seen, the best transfers. How many of these players on these teams that are still playing right now are led by transfer players? Walter Clayton, the guy who, we've given a lot of love to. I've given him an All-American vote. You've given him serious consideration for major awards. Hit a pretty big shot yesterday. Iona transfer. Right. Will Richard, like, it's funny enough, there are 3 players in the Sweet 16 right now that were in the same recruiting class at Belmont. Like that's just kind of where things are. And they go to these schools, they're older, they're a little more seasoned. So you're going to have to still find those players if you want to get back to where this program expects to be back after the year they had last season.
Yeah. And, for South Carolina right now, too, one of the more important off seasons this program's had in a long, long time, if only because of where the league is, the competition for that kind of player. Only one coaching change is going to occur in the Southeastern Conference, and it's basically happened, if you haven't already heard. I guess it's not officially official yet.
I think it became official.
Did it? Has it become official? Okay.
The reports were last night. Yeah,
okay, Sean
official.
Miller. This morning, there was still waiting on, I guess they're probably waiting on a few lawyers to do their thing. But anyway, Sean Miller is leaving Xavier to go to Texas. But beyond that, everybody's back, so there's stability in coaching, which means that players can feel comfortable. And I don't even really look around. I mean, I guess you would have to say, and again, this is just kind of observational, that Coach McMahon and Coach Paris would be the 2 that would go into next season with a level of uncertainty if they don't get some things turned around. And we know that both schools have committed to spending more on roster procurement. I think that's the right word to use.
That's an AP level word. Yeah, very good.
So there's that, right? And then who drops off? I mean, you're going to see all 16 schools make the NCAA tournament next year?
Don't think that's happening.
I don't think that's happening either.
Because you can only finish 500 as a league in league play.
Got some football recruiting news on the other side as the postgame show. Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union, ready to help you and your family with any and all of your banking needs. And what a great lesson it is to teach your kids to start saving money, right? Well, when you bank with Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union, they've got several programs that will reward you for saving. I won't go over all the details right now, but you can get them when you log on to palmettocitizens.org and find out about those different programs. Again, what a great thing. Be rewarded for saving money, extra cash in your pocket, right? And if it's time to get the kids going on, learning about a checking account, how to manage that debit card and ultimately into a credit card, Palmetto Citizens ready to help you out with that too. In fact, any and all of your banking needs, and you do it for a lot less money than with the big banks. Check them out. My wife and I have been members for many years now. Love what they do. PalmettoCitizens.org, 14 locations all across the Midlands. Achieve your potential with Palmetto Citizens.
From the WIS Traffic Studios, I'm Elijah Campbell. The few accidents to get to you that are causing some issues on the roadways, starting with one on Cedar Creek Road at Winsboro Road, Fernandina Road near South Carolina 67 and Piney Grove Road, Grover Wilson Road at Hines Road, I-26 eastbound at Airport Boulevard near exit 113, Coon Store Road at US 321, Oak Drive at US 1 near Augusta Road, and lastly, one on Ridge Road near Jimmy Long Road.
Talking a little basketball, some portal news today. If you haven't yet heard, Gamecock portal news, that is, on the men's side. The women are still playing, of course. Zach Davis, Arden Conyers, Austin Hero, and now Nick Pringle, all in the portal. Davis and Pringle, of course, starters for South Carolina. Conyers was seeing some minutes. Hero was struggling to find time, and that wasn't likely going to happen. So that one didn't surprise us. That was the first one that was announced really last week, although the portal officially opened today. And Elijah and I have been discussing whether or not more Gamecocks will enter the portal. We can only speculate, and I don't have this on any kind of heavy authority, but the gut tells you that there's probably a couple more. I mean, you look at a school like Kentucky. I mean, am I right in saying Kentucky ultimately turned over the entire roster?
Yep. The entire roster.
And became a 3 seed, man. I mean, that's just that good for Coach Pope. That just seems almost impossible.
Going through the roster now, see if I can even see one player that was here last year.
They pulled it off. The Gamecock football team got some good news over the weekend. Zion Giles is a big 4-star offensive lineman from Carvers Bay. Right there, I guess they call it Hemingway, but I always thought Hemingway was in Williamsburg County, not Georgetown County. I guess it's right on the line down there somewhere. I don't know.
Depends which part of town you're in.
Been down that way. They got good barbecue, I'll tell you that much. But he is the number 129 overall prospect in the 26 class, the number 7 interior lineman nationally in the class. But as the Gamecock Central guys point out, On3 is much higher on him than other services. In their rankings, he is rated number 40 overall. That is what I would call significant.
Yeah, that's
89 spots. And the number 3 interior lineman in the country. They say On3's been on him for some time. But anyway, he is staying in state and coming to South Carolina. So that is now 3 4-star prospects that have committed to South Carolina for the 2026 class up to this point. Safety Jazavian Currents from Rock Hill is up there as well.
That place has produced some pretty good football players.
Yeah, Rock Hill's all right, man. Just if you don't believe me, ask David Cloninger how good Rock Hill is at producing football talent.
You might get some glowing reviews, maybe.
If he feels like talking about Rock Hill. That's the thing. It's hard sometimes to draw out of David.
I really have to pry.
Yeah, a lot of Rock Hill. He's very shy about his hometown. He's very humble about his hometown. He doesn't like talking about it a lot.
He doesn't. No, he never brings it up.
Yeah, he won't bring it up. No. You gotta bring it up. Like, I've never seen David in any kind of T-shirt that may proclaim Rock Hill's football prowess, or anything like that.
It's almost like you have to interrogate him.
David, tell me about Rock Hill football now. Oh, I don't know, man. I don't know if I want. David, I mean it.
I'm not in the mood. I can't. You're never in the mood to talk about it, David. Never.
All right. I'll talk about it. But anyway, good stuff there. Spring ball going on. I know Mike Shula spoke earlier today. We'll have more on that for you on tomorrow's program. But I want to come back around to a few things around basketball and the portal and what it's meaning really for this year's tournament, because I have found it interesting. And look, chatter's chatter, so take it as you will. But it feels like there's people kind of complaining about this year's tournament. And I'll grant you, there haven't been a lot. Like last night's Maryland win over Colorado State was the only literal buzzer beater that we've had. Now, we had a couple of games that finished late and tight, like UConn, Florida, and a couple others, but they didn't necessarily arrive at a tight finish right there at the last. And by the way, Derek Queen did not walk. I don't even know where that came from. Not one person while watching that game went, oh. Now, there was a play earlier in the second half where I do think, I forget which, one of their guards probably did get away with an extra half step.
Yeah.
And they didn't call it. But Queen, nobody called for that there.
No. Well, in real time, you're not thinking that at all. You see a slowed down replay. And the definition of a gather step is so vague that it's just up to an official's interpretation whether or not he took had the possession of the ball enough to gather step and then take his two, which you are allowed to do. It's one of those, like, it's so finely parsed. Like, you can look at that in slow motion and say, yeah, that's probably a travel. But also, Gene Steratore said last night, that no, I don't believe it is, because I don't believe he fully gathers the ball until this right here. And technically, according to the rules, you can bobble a basketball if not having firm control of it, and take 4 steps, right? And that still not count. It's because it's so finely parsed within the rule book. Like, Matt Norlander contacted a couple of trusted officials last night after that, and they said he did walk. But at the same time, if we're having to have this much of a debate over what a gather step is, and you can't tell in real time that he did not travel, you don't call that.
Yeah, you don't call that.
Because it's not clear enough. It's kind of like the evidence-based overturning of a call when you're using video replay. Not a soul on the planet saw that play in real time, was like, oh my God, he traveled. This is an egregious violation of justice. Nobody did. No, I didn't realize it was even that close until I had somebody send it to me and go, travel or nah. And I was like, in real time, didn't care, because I just didn't notice. They move so fast that you're really not noticing until you're slowing it down.
All I noticed, and I'll echo what I told you earlier and what Clark Kellogg said last night. Here's a big that didn't turn. You would expect a big there. If you get the ball at the elbow, you would expect a big to back himself down and then turn and go. He went straight in, man.
He knew he only had 3 seconds.
And I just, what a great play. By the way, as a quick aside, if you haven't already heard, Niko Medved, the former Furman head coach and very successful head coach out at Colorado State, has today become Minnesota's, that's the Gophers, not the T-Wolves. The Gophers' new head coach. So Niko Medved moving himself into the Big Ten and getting a big pay raise. And Ben McCollum is going to Iowa, if you didn't hear that. The Drake head coach for just a year. So there's 2 head coaches that have been at a school in this tournament actually, Coach DeVries didn't make the tournament. They got screwed. But Ben McCollum is going to Iowa. So he's staying in state.
Yep.
But going to Iowa. And I'll come back around, is that a good move? I want to get into that and more on this tournament for you. And again, remind you that in about a half hour's time, Coach Paul Maneri coming up on a disappointing weekend, certainly. That is putting it kindly. And what his baseball team can do to try to get things turned around when all you've got is a neutral site matchup with a top 10 team and then the number 1 team in the country coming to your house this weekend. It's the Monday Postgame Show. Welcome back in. Final few minutes of our second hour coming up. Top of the 5 headlines of the day. Pulmonary after that. A very disappointing, discouraging weekend for Gamecock baseball. Have a drive around the SEC for you next hour as well. A couple of things. First off, by the way, I said Iowa had hired Ben McCollum. He's from Iowa City, so he's quite literally going back home. So that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. And I don't know. I know Drake is in Iowa. I can't remember what city Drake is in.
I think it might be like in Des Moines.
Okay. It's not a big. It's kind of like South Carolina geographically, right? It's like nothing's too far from anything in Iowa.
Yeah, it's in Des Moines. Drake
Okay.
is. Trivia fact of the day.
There you go. Thank you. Earlier, we were talking about how many players have already gone into the portal. Again, by 3 o'clock, it was 500. I would seriously expect that. I mean, I think last year it was 2,000 something. So we're going to hit that number. Not like today, but I told Elijah earlier, it would not surprise me if by the close of business West Coast time today, giving the entire nation day one of the portal opening, that we had already hit 1,000. That's not going to surprise me in the least. That's just where we are. A couple of you hit me on Twitter. First one says, the only long-term fix, by the way, I don't know this person's real name, and I don't often do this, but their Twitter handle says tweeting while irritated, which in and of itself is...
Ooh, I'd advise against that. I'm not like a therapist or anything, but I would advise
well, that's one
against
reason to stay off of the Twitters. The only long-term fix is the complete divestiture of athletics from so-called academic institutions. I'll come back around to that one. JC says the NCAA didn't get out in front of this when they had the chance. The result has been chaos as predicted. Well, on that one, amen, man. Again, you've seen these things coming, and you genuinely believed under Dr. Mark Emmert's leadership. And look, the presidents and chancellors that make up these various committees empowered Mark to do this. But they fought and fought and fought and fought and fought. Again, I come back just to the Alston case, the 9-0 case at the NCAA laws, which is one of many defeats in federal court. That one's obviously just the most glaring. But you had lawyers. As I've said many times, Elijah, you had lawyers in-house counsel and out-of-house counsel. Oh, yeah. We can go make a good case for this. No.
We can make a good case
for this. You got curb stomped, man.
After we lost all these, we still got it. We still have a chance.
You got curb stomped. If you just want to take it as football, you lost 63-0. Anyway, on the only, again, tweeting while irritated, the only long-term fix is the complete divestiture of athletics from so-called academic institutions. Well, look, at that point, it becomes pro sports everywhere, and that's probably the better solution to this anyway, but that's not what we want in America. Again, it's not, I'm not comparing one and saying one's better than another, because I love college athletics and I grew up in a college town and this is what I cover. And I know how well the system can be run at times, despite some of this BS that's going on right now. But, in Europe especially, where the sports world is so incredibly developed, and I think we can make our biggest comparisons to, and y'all can't see me unless you're on YouTube, but the tiniest of people to the biggest of people. You play sports from the get-go, right? Mm-hmm. In certainly in Western and Central Europe, where there's about the same amount of people as we have. But if you're showing promise, you go to an academy where they do this, whatever the sport might be, and by the time you are middle of high school, if you're good enough, you've signed a pro contract. Now, you're not on the big club yet, unless you're Wayne Rooney or somebody like that. And Elijah, you know who that is. One of the great goal scorers. One of the great goal scorers of all. And he made his pro debut for Everton at age 16. But he is a phenom. Mm-hmm. It's just they don't do. I mean, you can play sports in college in Europe. Wherever you go, they got a soccer team, a basketball team, a golf team, a track team. They do all that. But if you're good at it, you're not doing it in college. But in America, we don't do it that way. And I'm not saying our system is wrong. Our system is different, and our system clearly works for us. But to completely divest of it, and you're just going to have it in name only, at that point, if I'm a kid, what's the point? I'm not doing that. I'm just going to go pro. And again, why we have these weird restrictions from the pro level on a certain element of the sporting society seems counterproductive too.
It doesn't make a ton of sense.
I don't agree with the complete divestiture, but you better find a way to make this all happen together, and they haven't done that yet. Hour 3 coming up.
From the WIS Traffic Studios, I'm Elijah Campbell. A few accidents to get to you. They're causing some issues on the roadways. We'll try to get to all of them here. Starting with one on Cedar Creek Road at Winsboro Road, Fernandina Road near South Carolina 67 and Piney Grove Road, Grover Wilson Road at Hines Road, I-20 westbound at Broad River Road near exit 65, I-26 eastbound at Airport Boulevard near exit 113, I-77 southbound at I-20 near exit 16, Oak Drive at US 1 and Augusta Road, Piney Grove Road at St. Andrews Road, and lastly, one on Ridge Road near Jimmy Long Road.
It is 5 o'clock news time on this Monday. Welcome back in. Also, the final hour of the post-game show alongside Elijah Campbell. I'm Jay Phillips. We appreciate you being with us. We're in the Herndon Chevy Studios, wherever you are. Again, thanks for taking some time with us. Let's start with what's going on locally. South Carolina women's basketball, the number 1 seed in their Birmingham regional, advancing to the program's 11th consecutive Sweet 16. Yesterday, beating Indiana 64-53. South Carolina down a point at the break, split with Indiana in the fourth quarter, 13 points apiece, but after halftime, a 26-14 quarter where South Carolina played smothering defense and found a way to really get hot for at least one frame. Offensively, Coach Dawn Staley, cut one, please, Elijah Campbell, saying the Hoosiers came to play.
Just want to say congratulations to Indiana for making it to the second round and giving us a hard-fought game. We knew coming in it would be very similar to the basketball that was displayed out there for the last 2 hours. Proud of our team, the way they gutted up and didn't flinch. It wasn't pretty, but at this time, it doesn't have to be. You just got to score more points than the other team and work the kinks out as we advance into the tournament.
One of the things Elijah and I were discussing earlier in this game is veteran play. You know, South Carolina leads America in bench points, but yesterday afternoon, I say only, depends on how you want to look at it, 19 points off the bench for the Gamecocks.
Great for most teams.
Yeah, it is. But for South Carolina, I think they average, 40 points a game off the bench or something. It's whatever it is. It's
numerous times this year their bench has outscored the opposing team.
Tessa led the way with just 9 points off the bench in her 19 minutes. Joyce Edwards did have 6 boards and an assist off the bench, but scored 5 points. And Malaysia Fulwiley, not herself yesterday, just 3 points, 1 free throw and 1 2-pointer in only 10 minutes of play for her. So you look at the starters yesterday. Kitts, 25. Fagan, 28. These are minutes, by the way, not points, obviously. Bree Hall, 33. Raven Johnson, 29. Tahina Paupau, 28. And Elijah, for those of you who've been with us for a little bit, Elijah and I were looking up Raven Johnson, again, that 29 minutes. I think only, what do we say? There were 5 games this year where she went more than 30 minutes, and there were about the same number where she played less than 20 minutes. And she averaged 23-plus per game this season. So to see her out there for that long, and you made a great point, too, man. She played all 10 minutes of the fourth quarter. Mm-hmm. That's what's going to have to happen. And here's Dawn Staley on, really, this time of year, you've got to rely on a veteran presence.
It's huge. I mean, we have to lean on, we got to lean on our most experienced players. They've been here before. They've done it time and time again through being on the court or just, seeing it from sitting on the bench. That is experience being in these situations. And I really don't want to, this is not, we don't take any of this for granted. Like, we didn't think we were just going to walk over to opponents in the first and second round, but getting to a Sweet 16 is hard. I mean, it's hard, and to do it in as many consecutive years that we've done it, it doesn't get old. It's not taken for granted, and we cherish the opportunity to move to the second weekend in the NCAA tournament.
And they have indeed done that. They'll be in Birmingham this weekend. We don't know yet what time. We don't even know an opponent. But I will tell you this much. The opponent will be either Maryland or Alabama. And the Terps are hosting the Tide as we speak. They've just tipped off. Just went under 9 minutes. First quarter, Alabama is up 4-3. So this game just got started. And we'll keep you updated. That we certainly won't end by the time we leave the air tonight. But the Gamecocks will get the winner of this one. And as I told Elijah, this game's going to end, more than 24 hours later than when South Carolina's game ended. I don't like that.
Lame.
I just think the NCAA and its TV partners, if nothing else, look, I understand that you want matchups at certain times and whatever else, and it is a television show. I'm totally down with that. But don't make teams have a day less rest than an opponent. One of the things we talked about was seeding in conference tournaments, like the Carolina and Texas thing. however much difference it may make, it's about a 6-hour difference in terms of when you finish a game. And it's just that much more recovery time for the next day or something like that. I realize that these are college athletes and that it's Monday and they're not going to play until at least Friday, and they'll be fine. I know, but you should still have – and they did it on the men's side too. You were talking about a few games. You know,
go out of their way to do it in the men's side.
Yeah, just at least schedule games to where, you know, whoever's going to play each other in the next round, they play on the same day.
Yeah.
It just to me – it's again, it's not the biggest deal, but it is like you're making them play, you know, Wednesday.
Right.
Or Thursday.
But yeah,
still,
it's
more than 24 hours later. I don't like
coaches
that
will
part.
tell you that all minutes of prep time imaginable is accepted.
Well, and recovery time.
Yeah.
And
recovery time, rest, all of that still matters. You spend a day traveling.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, again, it should Bama win this game on the road. They'll be only 45 minutes from home. And then it'll become a battle of which fan base turns out more. But as Elijah pointed out, tongue in cheek, I'll go ahead before anybody says anything. Does Alabama know they have a women's basketball team? I guess we'll find out this weekend. Because Carolina fans are going to be there.
Oh, they travel, man. They travel.
Yeah. It's an easy drive. Just here, I'll tell y'all, just get on I-20, and then once you get to Birmingham, just ask for directions to the arena. Because that's all you got to do. Just stay on I-20. But if you go too far past like if you get to Dallas, you went too far.
You're way too far.
So I'm just telling you. But once you get to
Prepare for it.
Once you get to Birmingham, just get off I-20 and ask somebody where the arena is, and you'll be fine.
Easy compass.
Very easy to get there. Gamecock men's basketball news. We now have 4 players. There could be more, but we know for certain there are 4 players in the portal. Nick Pringle is the latest today. The Beaufort County Wales branch alum announcing today that he is in. He joins Columbia's Arden Conyers. Zach Davis from down at Denmark Oler and Austin Hero. Excuse me, I was going to say Tyler. That's his brother, Austin Hero, in the portal. So Elijah, again, for those who missed our discussion on this, I don't know. Hero, not a surprise. We knew that last week that he was going to go in. Again, it didn't officially open until today. Davis, Conyers, Pringle, all to some degree, I think there could be a level of, when I say questioning, not like, what are you thinking? But like, I wonder what it is that made them decide this. Mm-hmm. They're all 3 South Carolinians, and in the case certainly of Pringle and Davis, they were starters. So I asked you, and again, we may ultimately get some answers on this, but how much of this was a 2-way exit interview street for these decisions? We'll ultimately find out, but and certainly there's some of that at play, yeah?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, because there's, especially with some players, someone like Zach, for example, has 1 year of eligibility left. His clock is running out in terms of his college basketball experience. It would be safe to assume that he wants to be highlighted more in an offense, which makes total sense. One that maybe suits him a little better. And if that doesn't appear to be the case next year, then there probably was feedback on both sides that you might be better off going somewhere else. A lot of these type of conversations end up going this way where what's the player need? What does the coach need from that position on the floor? They're not always going to see eye to eye. It's not always going to be a mutual agreement, and sometimes that's these meetings end with a player ultimately transferring. Sometimes it's coaches encouraging transfer, right? Because if they're honest and they don't see that player being the part that they want to play on the team next year, they can be upfront and honest and say, hey, this is not the role we envisioned for you. We know this is what you want, but we're probably going to have to move in different directions. That's a very common happening in the sport.
Yeah. Again, portal just opening today, so there could be more Gamecocks that go into this. This is me speculating, nothing else. I expect a couple more, probably, whether they're down on the bench a little bit or any other names. I know a lot of folks are asking about Cam Scott. Don't know, haven't heard.
It's a good sign that he hasn't done it yet.
Yeah, that's fair.
I would say. Yeah, that's a good
I don't
sign.
disagree. I don't disagree, but we'll see. Because by now Lamont has spoken with all these kids. They've done the exit interview portion of everything. So we'll continue to keep an eye on that one for you. Baseball, again, we'll have Coach Maneri coming up in just a few minutes' time, but a very disappointing weekend over in Fayetteville. Gamecocks got run-ruled on Friday night in the opener, 12-2, then a 12-3 loss on Saturday afternoon at Baum Stadium. And yesterday, the Gamecocks, after having an early lead, then seeing the game tied at 4, after they came up with a couple in the 7th, went to the bottom of the 8th, tied at 4, and got out of the 8th down 11-4. And that was your final score yesterday. Again, a very discouraging weekend filled with chasing a lot of early pitches, some mental mistakes out on the base path and in the field, and just some things that I know Coach is going to want to do everything he can to correct. Gamecocks have a ranked opponent in North Carolina tomorrow night up in Charlotte, and then number 1 Tennessee comes to town this weekend. Again, South Carolina gave up 35 runs on the road. Tennessee scores a lot of runs too, and now the Gamecocks are in yet more pitching flux because of a fluke injury to Dylan Eskew. If you didn't hear, Dylan was hit on the head by a home run in the bullpen over the weekend and put in the concussion protocol. That forced Jarvis Evans to the hill yesterday. Jarvis only went 3, but he actually threw a whole bunch of pitches because he had a couple of guys that really battled him. I think there was one where he went like 13 or 14 pitches.
It was a 13-pitch at bat, yeah. It's tough.
So, again, forced into early duty anyway, where he was expected to start tomorrow night. We'll talk to Paul here in just a minute. But, again, I don't have any other word for it, very discouraging weekend. And you're just 1-5 now to start conference play. Final few notes on our integrated media headlines of the day. It is now official. Sean Miller has left Xavier to become the new head coach at the University of Texas. He replaces Rodney Terry, who took over a couple of years ago after the Chris Beard situation. Minnesota today naming former Furman and most recently, of course, Colorado State head coach Nico Medved as the new man to run the Gophers program in the Big Ten. And speaking of the Big Ten, Drake's Ben McCollum leaves that job after just one season. He returns to his hometown of Iowa City to take over the Hawkeyes. So there's a couple of pretty big vacancies filled, including the only one this season in the Southeastern Conference. And I guess now the Big Ten jobs are all filled, right? Indiana's got their guy, and now
Minnesota,
Iowa and Minnesota. So there you go. Carousel spinning a little more rapidly this year than in some seasons.
Yeah, and that opens up, jobs elsewhere.
Yeah.
Xavier opening is going to be really.
I saw that Luke Murray, Bill Murray's son, is maybe, I hate to say that's what he's known for, other than maybe being Dan Hurley's top assistant, which is probably what he should be better known for in terms of basketball.
The engineer of their 2 championship offenses.
Yeah, I did see that Luke Murray will be a big-time candidate at Xavier. We shall see, but probably ready. What's he, like 40?
Gotta be.
Yeah?
Gotta be. Yeah, he's been doing this for a bit.
About
and he used to be an assistant at Xavier.
At Xavier, right. And he's been at a few places. Mm-hmm. But we'll see. We'll see. Maybe Bill Murray becomes a Cincinnati resident.
Once again.
That's right. That's our integrated media headlines of the day. Come back on the other side. We'll talk to Coach Maneri about what went wrong and what can be fixed as the Gamecocks have one more series in March. And again, it's against the best team in the country this weekend with the Heels tomorrow in Charlotte. Coach Maneri coming up on the Postgame Show. Looking to make some improvements around the house here in 2025. Now could be a great time for you to check in with the pros at Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union and see how much you could save with a home equity line of credit. Been in your house for a while, built up some equity? Well, tap into that over a 10-year draw period. Maybe it's time to get, the kitchen fixed up. Maybe it's just a little too 90s for you, all right? You want to go with the latest in kitchen technology? Get that done. Kids are getting a little older. Maybe they need a playroom or, they're all on top of each other in their bathroom. Hey, add on an extra bathroom. Or maybe something for you and your significant other. Maybe it's time to get a pool out back, patio, a deck, whatever it is around the house. Get it done. Save money with Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union. Apply online right now if you want to. Safely, palmettocitizens.org or any of their 14 convenient Midlands locations. Join my wife and me as members at Palmetto Citizens. Nineteen minutes after 5 o'clock on this Monday afternoon. Welcome back into the postgame show along with Elijah Campbell. I'm Jay Phillips. Time to talk a little Carolina baseball. Always appreciate the time of the head coach, Paul Maneri, who joins us now on the line. Coach, always appreciate you. As I said, the adjective I put on it for this weekend for your ball club was discouraging. You've done this a long time, and I know you mentioned in your postgame Friday you couldn't recall the last time you were run ruled. It happens, and that's part of sports sometimes. And then Saturday, not a whole lot better. Yesterday, a different approach, and you went into the bottom of the 8th, tied up, and then it got away from you. I know I've thrown a lot at you there, and I'll kind of let you answer, but where is your ball club right now? When you tried to make some adjustments yesterday, and then you had a fluky situation to put Jarvis back on the hill, and it just didn't work out for you in the end. What was that flight home like, and where is your ball club today from a mental perspective?
Well, obviously it was a very tough weekend for everybody. A lot of it had to do with just the quality of the Arkansas team. They're just as potent and powerful a college baseball team probably that I've ever coached against. It happened to be that the wind was galing out, and their physicality and their strength and the way they swung the bats. I mean, they're clearly one of the best teams in the country, and we ran into a buzzsaw with them. The first night, we had a couple of bad things happen to us. Some of it was our own doing, and the game just got kind of out of hand. And then the game on Saturday was I don't know when I've ever seen anything like it. Jake gets the first 2 hitters out on 8 pitches and hits the third batter. They give up a base hit, then it gets 0-2 on the next guy. We're a pitch away from getting out of the inning with no runs, and he hits a 3-run homer, and it just snowballed from there. And Jake just couldn't get the last out, and we couldn't make a play for him. And the game just 8 spot in the first inning, and just created a very difficult situation for us. Yesterday's game. The other thing that happened on Saturday was before the game, which you alluded to. Dylan Eskew was out in the bullpen doing some pitching drills during batting practice, and one of our players hit a ball out of the park in batting practice, and unfortunately it hit him in the head. And, so he started to have issues with that, as you might imagine, and we had to scratch him from the start on Sunday. I thought Jarvis on short notice, did a very credible job and kept us in the game, and we actually had a 2-0 lead. They tied it up. And then, it was a good ball game, and they scored a couple runs. We got a clutch hit finally and tied the score, and unfortunately we couldn't push across the runs. And, we brought in the guy that's been closing games for us, and he 4-pitch walk, a home run, and another hit, and, got him out of there, and everything snowballed from there. So it was just a really, really tough weekend. And, unfortunately, these things happen sometimes. You never expect them to, but Arkansas hasn't lost at home. I think they're like 20-0 at home. So, they're 20-0 for a reason. They're really good. They very powerful lineup, very good arms, and our kids did the best they could, but we've got to improve from here. There's no question about that. We instead of taking the day off today, we practice today, and we'll take off the mandatory 1 day a week on Wednesday, and just try to get the guys mentally back to where we need to be and have a little practice and get ready for North Carolina tomorrow.
You mentioned, getting the guys back where they mentally need to be, and it can be discouraging when you get into a game like yesterday where it's, Will made a great hit to be able to tie the thing up at 4, and then one thing kind of leads to another, and it snowballs, and it ends up 11-4. We saw it kind of in the Clemson series too, where you're battling through 6 or 7 innings, and it kind of gets away from you late. But what, from a mental standpoint of trying to keep these guys from getting too discouraged, to keep them kind of engaged whenever the game does start to get away, like we've kind of seen this year?
You talking about on that individual day or after the fact?
After the fact, to
well,
avoid
I met with the team today, and went over a lot of things with them, that would be internal, meant only for internal reasons, ways to improve and things that we need to do a lot better and so forth. It's my job to keep the guys in a positive frame of mind, you can't do anything about what's been done already. All you can do is look forward and get ready to go. And we've got great opportunities ahead of us. I mean, next weekend we have another one of the very top teams in the country coming in, and before that we go up to North Carolina and play another top 10 team. So, the schedule is definitely, challenging right now. And, we have some areas that, obviously we're going to, strive to improve in and, this year and beyond. And we just got to keep battling, got to keep the guys in an enthusiastic state of mind and believing that they can do things, and then they've got to go out and do them. We got to make more plays in the infield than we did this weekend. We've got to make some better pitches. We've got to come through with some clutch hits, which we haven't done in the last week. So, it's a difficult game to play, and I understand, people that follow the program get frustrated, when we don't do well, but it's all part of it. We've got to improve in some areas, which we'll do over the course of time through recruiting. And there's areas that we can improve upon this year with the personnel that we have, and we'll continue to work to do that. All we can do is just, keep working hard with the players and keep encouraging them and try to work on the things that we need to work on and go out there and get a good win, hopefully tomorrow night.
Talking to Coach Paul Maneri, Gamecocks in Charlotte tomorrow night against North Carolina. Coach, on those things you need to work on, saw a stat that this weekend you guys had 31 outs that you committed offensively on either the first or second pitch. And look, aggressiveness can certainly be a positive weapon for you. I'm just curious as to what your philosophy is on guys being aggressive, especially in run-scoring situations, and where you would choose for them to be more patient. I know you told us last week you don't really want him to go taking a walk, but where is that line for this version of a Paul Maneri baseball team based on some of those numbers?
Well, let me give you another statistic, okay? In our last 4 games, we've had exactly 3 hits with where we've driven in a teammate. So, we had 1 RBI single against Charleston on Tuesday. We didn't have any RBI hits on Friday. We had 1 on Saturday and 1 on Sunday. So, somebody's got to drive in some runs for us, and they're not going to do that by taking a lot of pitches. So if they get a good pitch to hit, I like them to be aggressive, and I want them to have the desire to take a leadership role and drive in some runs, because somebody's got to do it. We're just not getting those hits right now with runners in scoring position. And if a guy is very selective and takes walks, then he's just passing the baton to the next guy. And somebody's eventually got to step up for us and do it. And I think we've got some guys that can hit, but they're, if you take their aggressiveness away, they're never going to get the hits. So, when you're aggressive and it works, everybody, is proud of the team for being so aggressive and attacking, and not sitting back waiting. When it doesn't work and guys make 31 outs on whatever pitches you said, then you open yourself for criticism. So the only way to solve it is to come through with some big hits, and that's what we worked on today. We drew up some situations for the guys and challenged them today, and hopefully they'll come through with some big hits tomorrow night and beyond.
Speaking of tomorrow night, last thing for you, with Jarvis, who I'm with you, by the way, I thought battled pretty well yesterday and had a couple of really interesting at-bats against at least one hitter where he went, 13 pitches, and on short rest I thought he did nicely for you. But what does that mean for tomorrow night's starting pitcher against North Carolina?
Well, are you ready to go tomorrow night for us?
I'll give you a few, Coach. I'll give you a few.
Between Jay and I, we can get you 2/3 of an inning.
That's right. I can at least throw BP, Coach.
Yeah, I mean it's going to have to be a night where it's a bullpen game where a lot of guys are going to have to contribute. It's been nice having a midweek starter of Jarvis's capabilities, and he's been doing such a good job for us. But unfortunately, because of the freak accident that knocked Dylan out, we don't have that situation right now. So we're just going to have to try to mix and match it tomorrow night and hopefully be able to, get to the finish line with a chance to win. And
From the WIS Traffic Studios, I'm Elijah Campbell. The few accidents to get to you that are getting causing some issues on the roadways this afternoon. Thankfully, some of them have cleared up, but we still have backups accident-related on Clemson Road at Sparkleberry Lane, Highway 16 near Highway 555 near Farrow Road, Highway 6 near Bethany Church and Pleasant View Drive, I-20 westbound at Broad River Road near Exit 65, and lastly, one on 77 southbound at I-20 near Exit 16.
It is drive around the SEC time. I see that the computer found a way to slip one past the goalie on us there right before Elijah's traffic report.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. It shook me a little bit.
I don't know.
Coming January 2nd.
And that was
TV.
14 months ago.
That wasn't even this January.
No, that was last January. How'd that? I mean, come on, computer.
Good Lord.
Sometimes, man, computers, technology, gotta love it. Gotta love it. Anyway,
you expect me to believe they're going to take over the world one day?
Hey, that's the goal. Oh, wait, that's the fear. Welcome back in, Jay and Elijah with you. Thanks to Coach Maneri. You could hear it in his voice. Hey, listen, I'm not here to put any silver lining or put lipstick on any kind of pig or whatever y'all want to say about it right now. South Carolina better get better quickly, and you're being asked to do it against two teams this week, in addition to the one you just played, that are, Arkansas and Tennessee, I think you could say, are Omaha favorites.
They're top three teams in the country.
Yeah.
Make up two of those three.
And the Heels are very, very good. Gamecocks have done all right in these midweek games against, North Carolina and NC State in recent years. But the pitching situation becomes that much more messy. And I was gonna ask Paul one more thing, but he kind of touched on it because the Gamecocks had a couple of, as he mentioned, just a couple of self-inflicted things. Like yesterday, does it make a difference? Potentially in a tight game, but you had just a really bad base running situation where one guy was running and one guy wasn't. Who was supposed to and who was not? It's just, and those are the kind of things. Listen, any of us that have played, or whether you ever played the game or not, you watch it a bunch. There's an E on the line score for a reason, because those happen. Coaches are forgiving a lot of times anyway of the physical error. The grounder that just comes up on you quick, the throw you try to make that's just a little bit off, whatever. Things like that happen in the sport. That's why it is a daily part of what happens in baseball. Runs, hits, errors. They're going to happen when you're throwing a tiny little ball around for 9 innings. What coaches are less forgiving of are the mental mistakes. And we saw Paul, because of, I think, a couple of things, he pulled Kazmar for Tippett.
Mm-hmm.
And without throwing the kid under the bus too much, basically said, look, I mean, I'm paraphrasing now. I got to have him focused on the game. And then Tippett, unfortunately, was part of a couple of miscues as well. You're working on that kind of stuff today. You're challenging those guys today. They know where they're playing baseball, both in terms of their school and in the conference. What they're going to go do about it, I don't know. And Paul's not going to give away coaching secrets. As you asked him, Elijah, he's not going to tell you some of the things that he said that are meant for his ball club. He's been doing it a long time. His two top assistants have been doing it a long time. And even Coach Hendry was with, Coach O'Connor up at UVA for a while, and he's a baseball lifer, is Coach Hendry, in terms of his family. So these men all know the sport up and down, inside and out. But they can't go play. And, the Gamecocks have just found themselves in games for the longest periods of time, and but you're now 1-8 against quality competition, your best competition. Again, I use that word. I don't mean that to disrespect the other opponents. Against your absolute best competition, you're 1-8,
Yeah,
and in several of those games, you got your butt kicked.
Yeah, and here's the thing too: the bullpen is another big issue as well. I mean, that's one of the reasons why you get close in these games. And in the final innings, you kind of fall far away, where one mistake is easy to compound in another. I mean, did the math on it today, your bullpen ERA in the series was over 7.
It's brutal.
Can't have that. You're not going to win games.
I mean, you can't have it anywhere. But that's brutal. That's not, over 5 is like.
And those are just the earned runs.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's not kind of the unearned runs.
And
that
you gave up quite a few of those
errors.
this week.
Yeah. So like, it is a team effort. I want to completely single the bullpen out, but that's kind of just one symptom of a larger.
Oh yeah, because you've had Friday night starters get rocked. Again, you had the Saturday situation. I mean, so yeah, you're right. You can't just put it on the pen because, in Friday games against Clemson, Oklahoma, and Arkansas, you got roughed up early and often. There's a lot to fix, and you are who you are roster-wise. And there's only so many different things you can do to try to change a lineup or a rotation or a role in the bullpen. Or again, pulling out one shortstop for another. And when you're having to make a shortstop change, that's not the most encouraging thing to hear. If you're making, I don't mean this, if you're making a left field change, okay. Shortstop, you need your shortstop.
It's important because they get a lot of action.
Yeah, so there's a lot right now to be concerned about. And again, yesterday, 4-4, bottom of the 8th, and you lose by 7. So we'll see. But tomorrow night, again, bullpen by committee. I think David reported that maybe Sweeney will get a start tomorrow night.
He was listed as the probable starter.
So, but Coach didn't necessarily commit to that yet either. So there could still be some conversations between Coach Maneri and Coach Rooney about who they want to put on the hill tomorrow night. Whoever it may be, I doubt they go very long regardless, unless they're just completely dealing.
Right.
So we'll see. We'll talk some more SEC basketball. We'll continue the drive around here in a few minutes. Baseball results over the weekend, though, I'll give you that. Texas took 2 of 3 from LSU. Mississippi swept Missouri. Georgia swept Florida in Gainesville. Y'all, we're talking a lot about Arkansas and Tennessee. Georgia's right there with them so far this season. Georgia's good. Very good. Very good. Very deep. They pitch well. They score runs. But watch out for the Georgia Bulldogs. Tennessee took 2 of 3 from Alabama. Vanderbilt swept A&M. Kentucky took 2 of 3 from Auburn. And Oklahoma went to Starkville and took 2 of those 3 from Mississippi State. So that's the baseball results over the weekend. The conference doing quite well in the men's and women's NCAA tournaments. We'll catch you up on that as we continue the drive around the SEC next.
Very proud of my team. We played Auburn basketball. We played like the #1 team in the country. We acted like the #1 team in the country. We prepared like the #1 team in the country. We talked a little bit about game one and not giving the kind of effort and energy that was required, and not really trusting one another, sharing it, and the sacrifices that need to be made. Tonight, we put all that behind us, and the guys did a phenomenal job on both ends of the floor.
Bruce Pearl, after Auburn moved on to the Sweet 16, 7 of the 14 schools that were into the NCAA tournament have advanced, so nearly half the field. Welcome back in. Jay and Elijah with you. Final few minutes of the program, and we'll continue our drive around the SEC. This is what it looks like for the guys this week. Bama will take on BYU, Maryland versus Florida, Arkansas, Texas Tech, Ole Miss and Michigan State, Kentucky, Tennessee. Never played each other in this event, but again have played each other more than 180 times in their schools' histories. And Michigan getting it done, coming back the way they did. They take on Auburn on Friday. Elijah, a lot of good performances, man. So, I was really impressed with Mississippi yesterday.
Oh, my God. I mean, against that defense, too, I think, a lot of people who maybe don't watch a ton of Big 12 basketball maybe weren't privy to just how dominant Iowa State was on the defensive side of the ball. It's a team that all year long was the top 10 defensive team in Ken Pom in terms of just efficiency. And Ole Miss in that game goes for 1.34 points per possession.
Yeah, they were great.
That's insane.
They were great.
Absolute insanity. And it helps when you shoot 57% from three. But, I mean, that's one thing that Ole Miss all year long has shown that they have the ability to do. Like, that's a really good three-point shooting
It's the
team.
Chris Beard Revenge Tour. I will win this event.
Right, yeah. After falling short at Texas Tech, he's...
Maybe not this time, but...
This team is pretty damn good, man. Ole Miss is a team that, let's not forget, did get a win at Alabama this year and picked up some really impressive wins.
Well, are they in Arkansas, listen, are they peaking at the right time? Perhaps, again, Florida got scared, but they got scared by Connecticut, so you can live with that. Auburn's Auburn right now, and I'm really looking forward to that Tennessee-Kentucky game, man.
That one's going to be a thriller.
Yeah.
I think it's a bad matchup for Tennessee. Tennessee's going to have to hit open three-point shots because they'll get them. But whether or not they knock them down is going to be the difference in that game. On
the women's side, speaking of Kentucky, that thriller yesterday. Saw a little bit of that when Kansas State comes back to beat them in overtime, 80-79. So Kentucky is out. Baylor gets by Mississippi, 69-63. Tennessee.
Ole Miss gets by Baylor.
Wait, is that right?
Yeah, Ole Miss beat Baylor yesterday.
Well, then the SEC website has it wrong, man. And I could have looked at that. I could have sworn I saw that the other way around too. They say 16. They say Baylor won at the ESPN or at the SEC website. So take it up with Greg.
You would think, Greg, if he's going to get it wrong, he's going to get it wrong on.
They do have it wrong, man. They most assuredly have it wrong here. I promise you. It says Baylor won.
Team.
Yeah, I thought that too. But anyway, all right. And then so they're in, and Tennessee beat Ohio State 82-67. As we speak, Oklahoma is just dominating Iowa.
Caitlin Clark can't walk through that door.
She is not walking through that door. 83-52, still 3 minutes to play in that one. So Oklahoma will be moving into the Sweet 16. And again, the most important one for Gamecock fans, Maryland and Alabama playing right now, nearing halftime in College Park. The Terps are up 39-38. Alabama has the ball. We are at about a little under 40 seconds to play. Gamecocks get the winner of this one in Birmingham. We don't know times yet for a lot of these games. Both CBS for the men and ESPN for the women like to wait until they have matchups to let us know who is going to play when. But Bama, 31.9 seconds is at the line with a chance to tie or take the lead going into halftime. So that's about the biggest update I can give you on that one here. I'll probably have a little bit more before we leave the airwaves. Elijah and I were kind of joking about this. Like, if you're a Gamecock fan, who do you want to play? Dawn doesn't care. And did they see Maryland this year?
They saw Maryland last year.
I know they've seen them a
Beat the
bunch. I
brakes
just
off
couldn't.
of them.
I couldn't remember if they saw them again this year. I had to go back to my non-con schedule because they always schedule up, and they've played Maryland a bunch. But do you want to play Maryland? Because this is not going to be a true neutral court in the sense that it would be if for most teams. But is it the same kind of thing in reverse for what Carolina enjoys in Greenville? But and will Bama fans show out in the same way that Gamecock fans show out in Greenville? Probably not. But they will come out in some force. In
They
full
travel.
force, I don't know. Gamecock fans will be over there. There will be thousands of Gamecock fans in Birmingham. And this is a 5 Alabama, 4 Maryland. So in terms of these two schools' abilities, they're pretty evenly matched. And as 39 all right now might suggest to you. So I don't know if I have an answer as to who you'd rather play. Dawn doesn't care.
I think on a true neutral, I'd rather play Alabama. But if Alabama plays, it's not a true neutral.
Yeah, so there you go. And Bama has just gone up. It's 41-39, 20 seconds left before halftime. Again, it's in College Park, so maybe the Terps turn it around. Good stuff today. Thanks to Coach Maneri for joining us. For Elijah Campbell, I'm Jay Phillips. Enjoy the rest of your Monday. We'll do it again tomorrow.